Bye.
Love you.
Love you too.
A lot of people know that on Hollywood Medium I read celebrities, but that's not all I read. Today is a little different. I know that I'm here for a TV show, Smiley Face Killers, The Hunt for Justice. I know nothing else about this case. I know nothing about what I'm walking into or who this person is even going to want to hear from. So we'll see what happens.
I'm Tyler. Oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. My name is Barb MaKay. I'm here today because my son Tommy Booth disappeared and was found drowned in 2008.
Since 1997, hundreds of college-aged men have gone missing. They are later found drowned in a body of water. Near where most of the bodies are recovered, smiley faces.
And I'm here today to try to get a little more info onto what happened to my son. It's really hard to live without him. He was my baby. He was the glue, really, that held our family together. I want to know what happened. You need that closure. And at this point, that's the most I can hope for.
Well, so good to meet you. I didn't catch your name.
My name's Barb MaKay.
Awesome. It's lovely to meet you.
You too.
Well, today I'm here for obviously a pretty unique reason, and I'll just kind of communicate everything that comes through. So I'm gonna scribble, but no pressure. So I'm just gonna see what we get here, and we'll go from there. Information can kind of come in and be a little overwhelming, so I'm gonna try to kind of dissect it and give each piece of information.
Okay.
One of the main emphasis that I'm putting on is a reference to this younger individual who would have died tragically. And I feel like that's obviously a big area of emphasis. The interesting thing was, before I even got here today, there was a very distinct feeling of like, I better come through or I better make a connection. It was almost like I'm waiting. And there was this feeling of like waiting before I even got here today. I do want you to know too, this individual had a lot to look forward to. So in the way this comes across, I just want you to know this does not in any way, shape, or form feel like a suicide to me. There's a very distinct reference to like the day of, or in a 24-hour period. They're kind of, this feels like almost clairaudient. I go from being in a very loud place to being in a very quiet place. It's putting a very alone feeling with this, almost like, oh, I'm kind of getting rid of people, like, I kind of want to get out of here. It's kind of the way I would describe it. The feeling is either like leaving a place because it's too loud, or hey, like, I need some quiet time.
I understand.
Okay.
The noisy place was he went out to a bar with 8 other people to celebrate somebody's 21st birthday. And they all left. And the person that was supposed to give him a ride home said he couldn't find him when it was time to go.
On January 19th, 2008, 24-year-old Tommy Booth went drinking in a bar with a group of friends. 14 days later, his body was recovered in a creek directly behind the bar. The medical examiner ruled his death a probable drowning.
One thing that is coming to mind, they're having me talk about cognizance awareness. It's a feeling of like, I should know how to get from point A to point B, like where I'm at. But for some reason, I feel confused. His mindset didn't feel clear before he transitioned, and it's just because of something that would have been in his system that, to me, feels like something he would not have been used to dealing with or metabolizing. It feels like my body even, I'm feeling it more in my legs. I feel kind of like numb. It feels like having difficulty walking in some capacity. So that's definitely more than just taking a drink.
No, that makes sense.
And it is questionable. It would obviously imply that someone did this.
Well, we think he was drugged. Tommy could hold his liquor, so when he said that it felt like something more, then I knew that Tommy didn't really do drugs. He was more of a drinker. So that validated for me that this wasn't just an accident.
This is interesting. Yeah, names are one of those things where when they come through, I like to just say them. But do you know of any like Roberts in the family or any strong R, like Robert sounding names? Robs or Bobs or?
Yeah.
Okay, who would that be?
One of the kids that he was with that night.
Okay. It could just be an indication that this person was around beforehand, but there's just an emphasis there.
And actually, I think it was Rob was the only one that had called him that night because he wasn't there.
I just feel like Rob might have more answers in some capacity or have something more that could be valuable to know.
Rob is probably the one that would say something And he was a very loyal person, and I think he wants to know the answers and have this straightened out as much as I do.
The interesting thing that kind of came in correlation with this was they were having me talk about an investigation. And this is where it gets interesting. There's so much of an emphasis on the investigative side of this that this person's not even having me talk about the passing itself as much as they're having me talk about the investigation after.
Okay.
And there's a reason. When it came to an investigation around this death, the thing is, there's this feeling of just like error, like just a lot of error, like human error, to be honest. That's his like #1 message here is like, even beyond his cause of passing, interestingly, it's like, look at the details of the investigation. It doesn't add up. And that is one of the big truths that I feel like we're meant to kind of take away from today. So does that make sense for you?
It makes sense,
Okay.
yes.
So the thing is that what's very distinctly being acknowledged is for some reason in the 2-month period after this passing, it does feel like in some capacity this would be reopened in some way.
What's important, I think, of the 2 months is when Kevin Gannon and his team started investigating the Smiley Face Killers.
So that would be the relevance.
Yeah, that was the next couple months.
Wow.
I met his parents in 2008, shortly after Tommy's death. And the mother always had grave concerns about Tommy's death, that it was suspicious in nature and she thought he was murdered.
Very odd. Having me talk about the search area. Now, this is kind of strange. He's having me talk about where one would search and what would make logical sense. And he's like, this doesn't make logical sense. The way I would describe this is if a search and rescue or if like people were looking for him, the feeling is like where they looked in the beginning feels like way off is the way that I would describe it. But what's weird is it feels like where they would have been looking seems logical. So obviously you know the case, but for some reason there's this feeling of people either not looking at the right spot initially and then finding it later on, but it's like where we look in the very beginning of this isn't, there's something about this not being right.
What happened was we looked up and down. He was found in a creek, and the detectives told me that he was there the whole time in the creek. And the Smiley Face detectives do not believe that he was in the creek the whole time. I know Tommy wasn't there because his coworker had walked up and down that creek the day before.
I didn't see anything at all.
One of the theories out there is that really Creek was frozen and that Tommy was under the ice, and that's why all the search people, including yourself the day before, missed him.
And that area wasn't frozen.
No.
No, it was not frozen.
Are there any questions that have particularly been big as far as things that you've really felt you've needed to know, or, you know?
Yeah, the thing about the creek, and I don't know if you'll know that, I like to believe that, you know, he was in the creek the whole time. They're telling me that he was only in the water for a couple days, and I don't want to think about,
Of course.
where he was the other 2 weeks.
I don't know how to explain this, but for some reason I feel like he would have gotten really, 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 really cold before he was ever in the water. And I know this is very strange to say, but he's not putting an emphasis of being in the water. I feel like I'm in nature. What I will say, just to take away from this at the very least, is I can tell that he was not in the water for that entire time.
Yeah, that was hard to hear, but I have to hear it. It does make a difference. It really does.
So it's just good to keep in mind, there's a name that's being referred to also, and it's kind of separate. It's a very distinct reference to like a Brian keeps coming through. I just need to remember that because that keeps coming in as well. It's weird. It's not like in the Rob sense. The Brian thing's very different. It's almost drawing a parallel between things. I'd be curious to see if there's a Brian who has gone missing or who has passed. And so was that pertinent for you?
That is because one of the other moms on the Smiley Face Killers, her son was Brian.
Wow.
And at the end of the show, they actually had the detective come in and tell her that they were reopening his case.
Wow.
The detectives are telling me that Brian definitely met with foul play.
I mean, based on what we told you, I want to reopen this case. I want to look at it as
So we
foul
wanted
play.
for years.
Well, I hope that that provides some hope that this situation,
does.
you know,
It
is going
does.
to be looked at again.
Right,
And
so that would be good news.
that makes sense. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's another investigation opened into this. And honestly, I feel like answers are going to come.
Tyler has given me hope that something is going to come of this investigation.
I feel like you, by doing this, by being here, I feel are really going to help bring an awareness to this case. There's such a pride for you being his champion and not just forgetting him and letting him go. And there's this feeling of deep gratitude. What I would say is I don't feel that he experienced a lot of pain, and I want you to know that.
Good.
That's a big thing.
Thank you.
I want you to know when this comes through, there's a feeling of just like, I'm okay, I'm at peace. But the feeling is I didn't feel he was afraid. I didn't feel like he was afraid. So.
I'm so glad that Tyler told me that he is fine and he wasn't in pain and he didn't suffer.
Thank you for taking the time
Thank
today.
you.
Good to meet you.
Me too.
Thank you. Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful day.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye. Oh, I'm so exhausted. Tyler is great.
That is so intense. I'm still kind of trying to process this all. My head is spinning.
Validated a lot of things that the detectives have told me, and I'm just so happy that I got to do this.
The shooting was really different for me because delivering messages from the other side is obviously an important thing, but in a case where someone has lost a loved one to a homicide or a questionable passing, there's an extra need to validate certain connections.
I think Tyler was connecting with Tommy. I just miss him. It made me cry. I mean, I'm proud of Tommy, but to know that he's proud of me, I'm glad he's proud of me because I'm doing it for him.